Hi guys, Mark here for KetoKitchenCollection.com, the home of the dynamic keto meal plan. And today's question is, if I stop doing keto, will I gain all the weight back? Well, let's say you're on a keto diet now, or you're thinking about going on a keto diet. That will allow you to lose a lot of weight. There's no doubt about it. A properly executed and adhered to keto diet, you will lose weight. If we take a step back and think about what caused you to go on that diet, obviously, you've gained more weight than you want to. What were you eating that caused that? If you're anything like me, it's probably a lot of breads, maybe some pastries, biscuits and cookies, and for me especially, a lot of breakfast cereal. Now, that can be full of sugar, even though you see all the ads in the front of the box and it touts it as being high in this, that, and the other nutrients and healthy for you. Often they're high in sugars or refined carbohydrates of some kind, and that's not good. That will add to your weight gain, and that's a large part of the problem in today's Western diet, is that everything we eat that's easy and cheap is full of sugar and refined carbohydrates. If you lose a lot of weight on the keto diet, that's fantastic, but if you then go back to eating all the same stuff you were eating before, that weight will come back. It will come back. It's like they say, if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting what you've always gotten. If you go back to doing what you've always done, you're just going to get what you got before. You're going to put that weight back on. You're just going to rebound. So the keto diet, it's amazingly effective at losing the weight, but it's not magic. It doesn't stop you from putting that weight back on if you go back to eating the same old things. Now, you could elect to stay on the keto diet. You don't necessarily have to be in a calorie deficit like you were to lose the weight. You can stay on the keto diet, and that's fine. It means you'll be avoiding all those refined carbohydrates and just carbohydrates in general. Some people thrive on the keto diet just permanently. That's their lifestyle. They stay on it all the time. But again, if you're anything like me, you don't necessarily want to stay on the keto diet all the time. You'll feel great for a while, but it can be a little bit restrictive socially, and sometimes you just want to have a bit of a broader range of food. So when you're going back from a keto diet to a carbohydrate-filled diet, there's a few things that you want to take into account, and we'll look at a few of those points in turn. So what my suggestion is, and this is what I always tell people who come off a keto diet so that they can ease back into things without having a big rebound back into the weight gain, because remember, when you're in ketosis, your body's receptors to glucose and carbohydrates get a break. They're not in use, okay, or very little are they in use, and they will resensitize. They'll be very hypersensitive to carbohydrates. So if you finish a keto diet and the next day just bomb yourself with chocolate and ice cream, all that sugar, or even if you really bomb yourself with a lot of carbohydrates, like hundreds and hundreds of grams of carbohydrates, chances are, with the amount of insulin sensitivity that you have, which is, you become very insulin hypersensitive, and your cells are very hypersensitive to accepting insulin and nutrients because of the keto diet. If you go bombing yourself with carbohydrates, it's going to get jammed straight into your muscle cells, straight into your brain very quickly, and it's probably going to spill over very fast and go into your fat cells, and you're going to put on the weight fairly quickly. So here's the plan. Here's what you should do. I'm going to tell you guys exactly what to do. Now, first of all, here's my mantra. If before you were on all those sugary foods and the breads, the pastries, the biscuits, the sugary cereal, the junk food, whatever it was, you want to avoid that. That will take you back to square one. You've gone on a keto diet. It's been super effective for you. That's fantastic. Okay, you've lost a lot of weight. That's great. But you don't want to stay on that all the time. That could be your preference. Okay, so what do? What's a happy middle ground? My mantra is, and I'll explain this more in detail, but my mantra is, number one, if it runs, eat it. Number two, if it swims, eat it. And you can think about this. Number three, if you can pull it off a tree or out of the ground, eat it. The closer you can stay to that, the healthier you will be, and the more easily you will maintain your weight. Now, that means you can have things like your rice and your potato and your pasta and that sort of stuff, because those are typically things that you can pull off a tree or maybe pasta. I'm not exactly sure about how pasta's made completely. Bread, yeah, sure, that comes from, wheat and so forth, but there is a process to putting bread together, so that's moving away from that mantra a bit. It's not to say you can't have it, but let's look at it in a little more detail, okay? So you go from your keto diet. The next day you want to start taking in carbohydrates again. Whereas on keto, for me specifically, I'd have 20 to 25 grams of carbohydrates a day to get into and maintain ketosis. Maybe you want to bump up your carbohydrates to, say, 100 to 150 grams a day, but only things, again, if it runs or swims, you can eat it. That's typically going to be an animal of some kind, right? Chicken, fish, beef, whatever it might be. If you pull it off a tree or out of the ground, eat it. Okay. Add in some fruit. Add in whatever vegetables you want. Have as many nuts, essentially, as you want. You've got a much higher limit of being able to eat carbohydrates now. Throw in some rice. That's fine. There's no problem with that. Have a whole bunch of mashed potato. That's great. You can do that, okay? But ease into it. If you've been on a keto diet and you've been measuring your food to some degree, you'll be familiar with how to do that. You can just measure out 150 grams of carbs, make sure it's good whole food, and you can't go too far wrong. It's going to be, a lot of people call it reverse dieting. It's something that, physique competitors do so that they don't put on a whole bunch of body fat straight away after a show or a competition. It's reverse dieting. You're gradually adding the carbohydrates back in. So once you've gone from 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates, stay on that for, say, a couple of weeks, a week or two. Only after a week or two, maybe start adding in some treats. Add in a chocolate bar here or there. Don't really try hard to avoid going the day after keto and just binging on everything, because I guarantee you guys, you're going to start putting on the body fat much more quickly than if you reverse dieted and eased your way back into it. Once you've gone a week or two with 100 to 150 grams of carbs, if you feel like you want more, bump it up to 250 and see how you go. A point with all of this is that, excuse me while I get this giant ant off the table. A point with all of this is that you also want to keep an eye on how much food you're eating. Now, if you adhere to my mantra, if it runs, eat it. If it swims, eat it. If you pull it off a tree or out of the ground, eat it. That type of food, that whole food, will be much more satisfying and filling. You're not going to feel like you need to eat as much, and you're going to get more out of that food than you would the other sugary, refined carbohydrate options. So typically you will eat less and get more out of that type of food. But if you start adding in some of the other treats, or if you just, it's how you are, you've got a big appetite, you're going to want to measure the amount of food you're taking in and keep an eye on the calories, because ultimately the type of food you eat does matter, but equally as much, if not perhaps a bit more in my estimation, the amount of food you eat also has a huge bearing on whether you will gain weight or not. It doesn't, you can lose weight on a keto diet, you can lose weight on any diet as long as you don't eat enough. And there's, I would say, definitely benefits to using a keto diet over others, but ultimately, when you finish your keto diet, don't go slamming sugary foods and really super refined carbohydrate-dense foods. Stick to the whole foods, and still to a degree, you can eat more, but don't go crazy just binging on food left, right, and center, because you will gain that weight back, guys. So when you stop a keto diet, will you gain all the weight back? Well, that depends on you. Ultimately, it depends on you. How much you eat and the types of food you eat, you can go about it the smart way. Do the reverse dieting, add in whole food carbohydrates gradually, and you can't go too far wrong. So what's your experience if you've been on a keto diet? Coming off the keto diet, have you had an experience where you've just gone straight back into eating the sugary foods, or do you stay on the keto diet permanently? What works for you? Please join the conversation below. I'd love to hear from you, hear your experiences. Thank you very much for watching the video through, guys. I appreciate you and the time you've given me. I'm Mark from KetoKitchenCollection.com, and I'll see you guys on the next one.